Hi there, I'm Kathleen Igantala and today I will be talking about word formation processes. But before we begin, let me ask you a question. In your lifetime, have you ever sat at a corner and asked yourself where words came from? And how words are formed? Because personally, I did ask this question to myself. Anyway, I am so glad because through this topic that I am about to discuss, the question that I had before is answered. So without further ado, let us now proceed to our discussion. Let us first know what word formation process is. Word formation process, also called morphological process, is a means by which new words are produced either by modification of existing words or by complete innovation, which in turn become a part of the language. According to this definition, there are two general procedures in word formation. They are modification of existing words and complete innovation. So again, we can form a word by either modification or innovation, but that's generally speaking. There are actually various specific types of word formation processes. They are folk etymology, blending, compounding, coinage, affixation, clipping, acronyms, back formation, reduplication, analogy, novel creation, creative respelling, borrowing, and echoism or onomatopoeia. For today, I will only be talking about affixation, clipping, acronym, back formation, and reduplication. Let us now proceed to the first type, which is affixation. Affixation is a word formation process wherein an affix is attached to a root, also called stem or base, to form a new word. There are two elements that we see here, affix and root. Let us first talk about root. A root is a free morpheme, also called unbound morpheme, that can appear or stand alone. On the other hand, affix is a bound morpheme which never occurs by itself, so it is always attached to some free morpheme and can either be inflectional or derivational. So there are two major parts in affixation, the root and affix. Affixation actually has three subtypes. They are prefixation, suffixation, and circumfixation. Let us talk about prefixation first. Prefixation is a morphological process where words are formed by adding an affix to the front of a root. Basically, the affix used here is prefix. We have here good examples of prefixation. Un plus tidy, untidy. This plus grace, disgrace. And im plus possible, impossible. So we can see here that the prefixes used in the examples are un, this, and im, which are negating prefixes. Now, can you also think of a word where the word process prefixation is used? That's great! Here is a list of the different prefixes that we can use when we want to form a word through prefixation. I will not read them one by one anymore, but I do hope that if you have an ample amount of time, you can pause this video so that you will have a greater opportunity to read them with their meanings and examples. Now, let's talk about suffixation. Suffixation is the opposite of prefixation. In this word formation process, words are formed by adding an affix, specifically suffix, to the end of a root. Here are some examples of suffixation. Fear plus less, fearless. Child plus hood, childhood. And read plus reader. So here, we can see that the affixes are found in the latter part of the word. Now, it's your turn to think of a word which undergone the process of suffixation. That's right! Again, here is a list of suffixes that we can use in forming words through suffixation. I hope you can find time to have a closer look to them. The last subtype of affixation is circumfixation. This is actually the combination of prefixation and suffixation. Circumfixation is a morphological process where words are formed by adding an affix to the front and end of a root. Basically, both prefix and suffix are used in this process. For example, N plus light plus N, enlighten. Afro plus future plus is, Afrofuturist. Anti plus union plus ism, anti-unionism. So again, here are the different prefixes and suffixes used in the examples. N, Afro, anti, N, is, and ism. So now, can you also think of a word which undergone the process of circumfixation? That's great! Okay, now let's proceed to the second type of word formation process that I'll be discussing. Clipping. As the name suggests, clipping is a word formation process in which a word is reduced to a shorter form. With a sharp contrast to back formation, which I will be discussing later, clipping keeps the original word meaning intact. These words are very common in everyday speech. There are also 4 subtypes of clipping. They are back clipping, fork clipping, middle clipping, and complex clipping. Let's talk about back clipping first. Back clipping is also called final clipping or apocopy. It involves the truncation of end of a word, and it is the most common type of clipping. Let's take a look at these examples. Advertisement, ad, memorandum, memo, and gasoline, gas. As you can see, the latter part of the words are removed. Advertisement became ad, memorandum became memo, and gasoline became gas. Can you also give an example of back clipping? Great! Now, let's talk about fork clipping. Fork clipping is also called initial clipping or aphoresis. It is a word process which involves the removal of the beginning of a word. The following are good examples of fork clipping: telephone, phone, alligator, gator, and parachute, shoot. Again, it is obvious that the first part of the words are removed to make a new word with the same meaning. Now it's your turn to think of a good example of fork clipping. You were right! Now let's proceed to middle clipping. Middle clipping is also called medial clipping or syncope. This process involves the extraction of the beginning and end of a word. The following are examples of middle clipping: influenza, flu, detective, tech, pajamas, jam. The middle part is the only part that is left. Can you also think of an example of middle clipping? Great! Last but not the least, let's talk about complex clipping. Complex clipping, unlike the 3 subtypes that I just discussed, involves the removal of multiple parts from multiple words. This is basically the reason why it's called complex clipping. The following are examples of complex clipping: cable telegram, cablegram; navigation certificate, NAVCER; and organization man, orgman. So you can see here that multiple parts of the words are actually removed. Do you also have in mind a great example of complex clipping? Great! Okay! See to the third type of word formation process that I will discuss, which is acronym. Acronyms are formed by taking the initial letters of a phrase and making a word out of it. Acronyms provide a way of turning a phrase into a word. Here are examples of acronym: National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA; You Only Live Once, YOLO; and Personal Identification Number. There are a lot of acronyms used in this generation, especially in social media. Can you think of some? That's great! Another type of word formation process is called backformation. Backformation is a morphological process in which a new word is created by extracting affixes from another word. In this way, it is the reverse of affixation, in which affixes are added. Typically, in this process, a word of one type, usually noun, is reduced to form another word of a different type, usually verb. Take note that backformation is different from clipping, since it brings a change in the parts of speech or the word's meaning. Let's take a look at these examples. Donation, donate; editor, edit; television, televise; babysitter, babysit. It is obvious that the words on the left side are nouns, and the words at the right side are verbs. So the words on the left side are actually very different from the words at the right side. Can you also give an example of backformation? That's correct! The last word formation process that I'll be discussing is reduplication. Reduplication, also called cloning, doubling, duplication, repetition, and tautonym, is a word formation process in which a new word is created by repeating all or part of a root or a stem, often with a change of vowel or initial consonant. Based on their usage, the techniques of reduplication could be classified in the following manner. First, repetition without change. Second, rhyming reduplication. Third, repetition with change of vowel. And last, repetition with change of initial sounds. Repetition without change is basically just like bye-bye and tick-tick. So there's no change at all. The word is just repeated. Next, rhyming reduplication, like ding-dong and super-duper. Repetition with change of vowel, like wishy-washy and chit-chat. Lastly, repetition with change of initial sounds, like teeny-weeny. Can you also think of an example of reduplication? Great! So those are just 5 of the specific types of word formation processes. Let's have a quick review before we end our lesson. So the word formation processes that we discussed are affixation, clipping, acronym, backformation, and reduplication. Affixation, again, is simply a process where an affix is attached to a root. There are 3 subtypes of affixation, and they are prefixation, suffixation, and circumfixation. Next, Clipping. Clipping is a process in which a word is reduced to a shorter form where the word produced has the same meaning from the original word. Just like affixation, clipping also has subtypes: back clipping, foreclipping, middle clipping, and complex clipping. Third, acronym. Acronyms are formed by taking the initial letters of a phrase and making a word out of it, as in YOLO for you only live once. Fourth is back formation. Again, this is different from clipping. Back formation is a process where a new word is created by extracting affixes from another word, and the newly formed word has different meaning from the original word. Lastly, reduplication. This is a word formation process where a new word is formed by repetition. The techniques of reduplication could be classified in the following manners: repetition without change, rhyming reduplication, repetition with change of vowel, and repetition with change of initial sounds. Thank you for listening, and I hope that through this video, perhaps the question that I asked in the first part is already answered. Stay safe and God bless.